They speak loudly, yet their words do not settle. They fill the space around you, moving like wind through empty branches, restless, insistent, always reaching for attention. You can feel it, can feel the weight of their voices pressing softly against your chest. And yet, there is a quiet corner inside you that does not answer. It watches. It waits. Have you ever noticed that in the midst of so much noise, the smallest sound can feel the heaviest? You begin to notice the difference between the sound and the meaning. Sometimes people speak, and it seems as though they are shaping the air itself, but their words are hollow, echoing only against the walls of their own desire to be heard. And still, you listen, not because you wish to respond, but because there is something quietly instructive in watching the way they move, the way they push and pull, the way they insist on being seen. Do you remember the last time you simply listened without answering, without thinking of what you should say in return, without measuring the moment, without trying to claim the story for yourself? It is in these silent spaces that you begin to feel the stirrings of something you cannot yet name. A presence, perhaps, that is not theirs but your own. It grows not with noise or argument, but with calm, like a small flame sheltered from the wind. At first, it is fragile, barely noticeable. You might catch it when your breath slows, when your thoughts drift just enough to feel the pulse of your own heart beneath the chatter. Can you feel it now? The quiet unfolding inside, waiting for no one to notice it. The world around you continues its insistence, always moving, always speaking, always wanting to pull you into its urgency. But in that quiet corner, you begin to recognize that listening does not mean agreeing. Observation does not mean weakness. Silence is not emptiness. There is a difference between the voice that seeks to move the world and the presence that simply understands it. Have you felt that difference before? The moment when you realize that by not speaking, you are not absent, but entirely present. It is strange, the way silence can feel both heavy and light. It weighs on you because the world expects action, expects words, expects a response, but it also lifts you because it frees you from the need to react. In this space, you begin to see the subtle patterns, the way they lean into their own urgency, the way they circle around the same ideas, the way they do not notice the stillness beside them. And you quietly begin to take note, not with judgment, not with fear, but with the calm curiosity of someone who knows that the story will unfold with or without their interference. Perhaps the most delicate part of this silence is that it does not ask to be understood. It does not need to justify itself. It simply exists. You feel it as a companion, a quiet presence beside you, reminding you that there is another way to be in the world. Have you ever sat in a room where no one speaks, yet the silence itself speaks volumes? It tells of patience, of inner steadiness, of a strength that does not demand recognition. You begin to realize that it is in these unspoken moments that you begin to understand yourself. The longer you remain in this quiet observation, the more you begin to notice the subtle sounds around you. The soft shifting of the earth beneath your feet, the faint brush of air against the walls, the distant echo of a word that has already passed. All of it becomes part of a rhythm you can follow without effort. And in this rhythm, you find a strange comfort. Not the comfort of certainty, not the comfort of applause, but the comfort of simply being awake, simply being aware, simply being present. And so, even as they continue to speak, as they continue to fill the space with their insistence, you remain. You remain quietly, watching, listening, feeling the stirrings of your own presence grow just beneath the surface. It is not a presence that must move or prove itself. It does not demand attention. It is the quiet strength that begins in a single, unspoken breath. And in that moment, you understand that sometimes the most powerful thing is to simply remain. Have you ever known such a moment when nothing is said, and yet everything is understood? When the world goes on around you, but inside there is a stillness that feels like home. You may not speak, you may not move, but you are here, and in that presence you begin to sense the subtle shape of what is quietly becoming yours. And for the first time you feel it, the gentle, steady weight of your own attention, the quiet pulse of your own being, unfolding like a small flame in the soft, unending night. Inside, there is a restlessness that begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a low wind moving across a still pond. It stirs the surface, ripples appearing and fading, leaving a soft tension that you cannot ignore. You may not know exactly where it comes from, or why it lingers so persistently. Sometimes it is brought by their words, sometimes by the unspoken expectations that hang heavy in the air. Have you ever felt a weight that comes not from what is done, but from what you are expected to do, or from what the world imagines you should feel? The restlessness grows slowly, like shadows stretching at the edge of a room as the sun sets. At first it is only a whisper, a subtle discomfort that you can almost dismiss. But soon it presses more insistently against your chest, and you notice it in the quiet moments, and the pauses between words, in the stillness that surrounds you. It is a strange companion, this tension, because it does not speak, yet it communicates more clearly than any voice. It reminds you of the effort required just to remain yourself when the world seems to demand something else. You may find your mind wandering, turning over moments when you were expected to react, to speak, to defend yourself, to show that you exist in the same way they insist upon, and with each memory the restlessness deepens, not with anger, but with the quiet ache of awareness. There is a soft unease in knowing that so much energy is spent simply trying to fit into spaces that were not designed for you, in noticing how much noise can obscure even the simplest truth. Have you ever felt that ache? The one that lingers in the chest when no one sees the care you have taken, the patience you have offered, the thought you have spared. It is not a heavy feeling exactly, but it is persistent. It makes you pause in moments when you might otherwise move without thought. It makes you consider in a quiet way the consequences of every small action, every small word. And yet there is also a strange clarity in this unease. It is in these moments that you begin to sense the boundaries of your own being, the line between what belongs to you and what belongs to the world that keeps pressing closer. Do you notice it, the subtle difference between the restlessness that pulls you outward and the steady calm that waits quietly within? Sometimes the restlessness can feel like a small storm inside the chest, shaking gently, never violent, never loud, but enough to make you feel alive in ways you had not thought to notice. You may feel an urge to move, to speak, to let the tension go with a word, a sigh, a gesture. But even in this urge, there is learning. You feel how much of life is spent in the careful balance between movement and stillness, between expression and observation, between the outer world and the quiet place inside. You notice the small signs of your own heart struggling to find ease. A sigh escapes, a breath held a little too long, a small clench of the hands, and you watch these things without judgment, with the soft attention of someone learning the language of their own being. The restlessness is not an enemy, but a teacher. It shows you where your energy is spent, where your care is given freely, where your attention is drawn, and where it might be withdrawn without harm. Have you ever let yourself simply feel it, the slow rise and fall of your own inner tension without trying to change it? There is a peculiar beauty in this quiet discomfort. It opens small doors, tiny windows through which you glimpse yourself more clearly than in any calm that comes too easily. You see your patience, your restraint, your hidden strength, and with each passing moment you understand that the unease is not a sign of weakness, but of presence, of awareness, of a careful attent. Eye on to what truly matters. It asks you to notice, to feel, to remember that not all movement is necessary, not all reaction is wise, not all voices need to be answered. And so you sit with it, this soft, persistent restlessness, allowing it to be without letting it command you. You feel it ripple through your chest, through your thoughts, through the quiet space of your own mind, and as you breathe slowly, as you let your senses settle, as you listen to the faint rhythm of your own heart, you begin to notice a subtle shift. The tension does not vanish, but it becomes familiar, almost gentle. You recognize it as a companion in the quiet, a reminder that inner life is not always smooth, that patience is not always easy, that silence is not always empty. And in that recognition, you find a strange sort of comfort. The world may still be loud, the voices may still press, the expectations may still linger, but inside, in the small, still place where you breathe and watch, there is a quiet steadiness forming. It is not yet strength, not yet peace, but it is the beginning of both. It is the awareness that you can sit with restlessness, that you can observe it, and that in doing so, you are learning to inhabit the space within yourself with a calm, soft attention that no outside noise can disturb. There are moments when you feel unseen, even in a room full of eyes. They notice little of what you do, and even less of what you are. Sometimes their gaze passes over you as if you were RT of the background, a shadow that moves quietly without purpose. And yet, inside you are fully present. Every thought, every small gesture carries weight you know, even if no one else does. Have you ever felt that quiet ache of being misunderstood? When what you offer is invisible, yet it matters deeply to you. It is not always a sharp pain. Often it is soft, like the gentle pressure of a hand resting too long on your shoulder, almost unnoticed at first, then impossible to ignore. Their words, their assumptions, their quiet judgments hover in the air. They see fragments, pieces that are easy to grasp, but the whole of you remains hidden, waiting for recognition that may never come. And still, you continue to move through the world, carrying your small truths like fragile lanterns, lighting only the spaces you choose to illuminate. Being misunderstood is like walking in a forest where every tree seems to whisper its own version of you. You hear their interpretations, their conclusions, and you feel the urge to correct them. But in the stillness, you sense that correction is not always necessary. Sometimes their view of you tells more about them than it does about who you are. Have you ever noticed how often others measure you by their own fears, their own expectations, rather than by the quiet integrity you hold within? There is a loneliness in this, yes, but it is not bitter. It is gentle, like the soft weight of dusk settling over a quiet field. You learn to carry our truth without the need for constant acknowledgement. You feel your heart beating steadily, knowing that its rhythm does not depend on recognition. Even when they misunderstand, even when they misjudge, even when their words feel sharp or careless, there is a calm in the realization that your essence cannot be diminished by another's sight. It is strange how often the world rushes to define you, to label you, to fit you into patterns that are not yours. And yet, in that very rush, there is an invitation to stillness. You can observe without interference. You can hold yourself tenderly, fully aware that misunderstanding is not a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of their vision. Have you ever felt the relief that comes from releasing the need to be constantly explained, constantly defended, constantly proven? Sometimes you will feel the subtle sting of being misread, as if a small door has been closed in the softest way, unnoticed by anyone but you. A glance, a sigh, a fleeting remark may make the heart tighten. And yet, you also begin to notice the quiet spaces between these moments, where no judgment reaches, no expectation intrudes, no misunderstanding can disturb the slow rhythm of your own being. You start to inhabit those spaces with patience, with grace, with the gentle certainty of someone who knows that the deepest truths are never shouted. You may wonder in these silent hours if it matters that they see you at all. And perhaps at first it seems that recognition is everything. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to understand that being seen is not always the same as being understood. And being understood by others is never required for your spirit to remain whole. There is a strange freedom in this thought, a soft light that touches the corners of the heart, revealing that your strength lies not in their acknowledgement, but in the quiet constancy of your own presence. There is also a subtle lesson in patience here, in letting misunderstanding exist without letting it disturb the inner life. It is like watching a river flow past rocks that have been there for centuries. The water moves around, creating small ripples, small disturbances, yet it continues on its course, gentle and inevitable. And so, you watch yourself, your inner self, flowing past the impressions of others, learning to maintain a calm center, a quiet dignity that cannot be shaken by their limited view. In this quiet, reflective state, you begin to notice the hidden gifts of being misunderstood. It teaches endurance. It teaches clarity. It teaches the value of seeing yourself without mirrors, without the reflection of approval or acknowledgement. And most of all, it teaches the strength of a heart that does not depend on being seen to exist fully, a mind that does not rely on being measured to think freely, a spirit that does not require their recognition to remain gentle and steadfast. And so, even when they do not understand, even when they misjudge, you remain fully yourself. You walk lightly through their interpretations, letting the quiet truth of your being ripple gently in every step. You do not need to argue, to explain, or to prove. You simply continue, observing, feeling, and holding the small, steady flame of your own essence, knowing that it burns just as brightly, quietly, eternally, even in a world that cannot always see it. In the quiet moments that follow being misunderstood, you begin to notice yourself more clearly. The world has been busy speaking, pressing, and interpreting, and yet here, in this stillness, a small voice rises from within. It is soft at first, almost like a sigh, but it carries a gentle weight. Have you ever felt that delicate presence, a part of you that waits patiently for no one to notice it, yet exists fully in its own right? You may look inward and see the fragments of your own life laid bare, the moments of patience, the small acts of care, the quiet choices you have made that no one applauded, and yet they mattered. They mattered because they were real, because they were yours, because they reflected the truest version of yourself. And in seeing these things, even in silence, you begin to feel a subtle awakening, a realization that power is not always measured in what is seen, but in what is held quietly within. It is strange how often this inner truth waits patiently, hidden beneath the noise, beneath the judgments, beneath the restless insistence of others. You may have walked through many days, answering, reacting, adjusting, without ever noticing the strength quietly forming inside. But now, in this gentle observation, you feel it. The realization is not loud. It does not announce itself with triumph. It is calm, certain, and patient, like a river that has carved its course through stone without haste, without conflict, without complaint. Have you noticed how small moments can reveal great truths? A pause in a conversation, a long, quiet breath, the simple act of letting things be. These moments, so ordinary, are where the heart begins to understand itself. You begin to see that the world will always have its interpretations, its judgments, its expectations. And yet inside there is a place untouched by them, a place where your thoughts and feelings exist simply because they are yours, not because anyone else needs to see them, to validate them, or to understand them. In this reflection, you may feel a subtle shift. The tension that once urged you to act, to explain, to prove yourself begins to loosen. It does not vanish completely, but it becomes manageable, almost gentle, like a soft wind moving through the branches of a tree. and in its place, a quiet clarity emerges. You see that strength is not always in action, not always in words, not always in the recognition of others. True strength is the calm understanding of who you are, even when the world misreads or ignores you. The mirror within does not lie. It shows your patience, your restraint, your quiet courage. It reflects the choices you have made in moments of pressure, the decisions to remain steady when provoked, the gentle persistence of being present even when no one notices. And in seeing these things, you feel a soft pride, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that settles quietly in the chest, warming the heart with the knowledge that you have not wavered from your own path, even when the world seemed to misunderstand. You may also notice the subtle beauty in this kind of power. It is not loud or showy. It does not seek applause or reward. It exists quietly, almost invisibly, in every measured thought, every controlled breath, every soft choice to observe rather than react. Have you felt that before? The still satisfaction of knowing that your inner life is intact, that your essence remains steady, even when everything around you presses for noise and reaction. It is here, in these gentle, reflective moments, that the heart begins to understand something important, that inner power is born not from conquering others, not from winning arguments, not from being seen or praised. It is born from patience, from self-awareness, from the quiet cultivation of presence. It grows in the spaces between impulses, in the gentle restraint of the hand, in the soft holding of the breath before a response. And with each passing moment, it becomes more tangible, more real, more yours. And so, you sit with yourself, quietly observing, softly refla. Sitting. You feel the weight of your own understanding settling in like a gentle stone in your chest. The world may continue to misunderstand, to speak loudly, to judge and interpret, and yet inside there is a quiet certainty forming, a recognition of your own strength, a gentle knowledge that what is held within cannot be taken away. You have discovered without words, without conflict, without recognition, the deep truth of your own presence. And in that knowing, there is a calm, steady light that will guide you quietly through whatever comes next. There comes a moment when they speak, and you feel the familiar tug to respond. The words hang in the air like leaves trembling on a branch, waiting for the wind to decide their fate. At first, it seems natural to answer, to explain, to assert your place in the stream of conversation, and yet, something deeper stirs within, a quiet question that asks you to pause. Have you ever felt that subtle hesitation, the one that whispers not yet, the one that asks you to notice before you act? It is not fear that holds you back, nor confusion. It is the soft awareness that not every word requires a reply, not every gesture needs recognition, not every stir of the world demands your attention. You begin to realize that strength does not always reveal itself in motion. Sometimes it reveals itself in stillness, in the gentle choice to let the current pass without interference. And as you breathe slowly, as your chest rises and falls in the quiet rhythm of your own being, you feel a small shift take place. You notice how they continue, unaware of your silence, pressing forward with their expectations, their assumptions, their insistence. And still you do not answer, you do not explain, you do not engage. At first it feels strange, almost uncomfortable, like walking through a room where the walls are made of air and yet resist your movement. But slowly the discomfort softens. You begin to feel the quiet strength of choosing not to be drawn into their urgency, of holding yourself intact when the world tries to pull you outward. It is a subtle kind of power, this choice of silence. It does not shout. It does not demand recognition. It does not prove anything to anyone. And yet, it is a power that resonates deeply, like a bell struck softly in a distant hall, its tone lingering long after the sound has faded. In the quiet, you feel the boundaries of your own heart, the limits of your own energy, the small space you carry inside where only you may enter, and you understand, without needing to say it aloud, that this space is sacred. You may notice the small temptations to speak, the gentle nudges of pride, the quiet insistence of frustration. They rise like little sparks, flickering at the edges of your mind. And yet, each time you let them pass without action, without reaction, you feel something growing inside, a steady patience, a soft clarity, a gentle authority over your own impulses. Have you felt that, Beth? Or the calm satisfaction of knowing that the choice to remain still is itself a kind of movement, a quiet motion of the spirit. In these moments, you begin to see the beauty of restraint. It is not imposed by fear, not forced by rules, not earned by obedience. It is chosen freely, lovingly, with full awareness of what it costs and what it gives. You understand that not reacting does not mean weakness, that silence does not mean absence, that letting go of immediate response does not mean surrender. Instead, it becomes a form of quiet mastery, a subtle shaping of yourself that no one else can take away. You may watch them, still unaware, still insisting, still seeking a response that does not come, and in watching you feel a soft joy, not the kind that bursts outward, but the kind that settles quietly in the chest, warming the heart with its gentle presence. It is the joy of knowing that you are not defined by their perception, that you are not moved by their urgings, that your inner life remains intact and whole, untouched by the push and pull of their expectations. As the silence stretches, you notice the world around you in small, subtle ways, the slight shift of air, the soft rhythm of your own breathing, the faintest sounds that you might have missed if your attention had been elsewhere. These small details, so easily overlooked, become a quiet landscape you can inhabit, a refuge from the restless demands that press from all sides. And in this landscape you realize that every moment you do not react, every moment you allow the world to move without interference, you are practicing a soft, steady power that grows quietly, almost unseen within you. And so even when they continue to speak, even when the weight of expectation presses softly, you remain. You remain still, observing, breathing, holding the quiet truth of yourself in each measured heartbeat. You do not need their understanding, their approval, or their recognition. You simply need this moment, this choice, this gentle awareness of the power of stillness. And in that knowing, a new kind of strength rises within you, one that belongs entirely to yourself, soft, steady, and unshakable. Time teaches in quiet ways. You begin to notice that every choice to remain still, every moment of restraint, becomes part of something larger, something steady beneath the surface. It is not sudden, not loud, not easily seen by others, yet slowly, almost imperceptibly, the heart begins to change. Have you ever watched a river carve a path through stone, not by force, but by patience, by persistence, by quiet, unhurried motion? This is how restraint shapes the inner life. Each time you choose not to react, you add a small brick to the foundation of yourself. At first it may feel fragile, almost insignificant. The world continues to push, to demand, to insist, and you might wonder if your quiet effort matters at all. And yet, over time, you begin to notice the difference. You feel steadier, Cal. More present. Your energy is no longer scattered to the winds, lost in unnecessary arguments or fleeting moments of frustration. You are learning the slow art of holding yourself together, softly, without need of applause. There is a subtle growth that happens in these quiet choices. It is not visible in the eyes of the world, not counted in achievements or recognition. It is felt in the chest, in the rhythm of your own breath, in the calm that settles over your thoughts like evening mist. Have you noticed how small these changes can feel at first, and yet how deeply they shape the way you inhabit each day? The strength of restraint is invisible, and perhaps this is its greatest gift. You begin to see that every time you resist the urge to respond, every time you step back instead of forward, you are learning something profound about yourself. You are learning that your energy is precious, that your inner life is sacred, that your heart need not be moved by every voice or every hand that reaches for it. This understanding grows quietly, like roots spreading beneath the soil, unseen but unshakable, providing a steady foundation for all that you will become. And it is not without challenge. The impulse to speak, to act, to push back will always return. It is like the wind, returning in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes strong. But each time you practice restraint, each time you hold your silence and observe instead of reacting, you meet the impulse without losing your self. You learn that patience is not weakness, that waiting is not empty, that strength does not always demand expression. Do you feel how this subtle mastery, repeated again and again, begins to form a quiet armor around the heart? You may also notice the way your awareness deepens. When you no longer rush to answer or defend, you begin to see more clearly the patterns of the world around you. The way voices rise and fall, the way intentions hide beneath words, the way people move according to their own unseen urgencies. And you remain steady, observing without interference, learning the rhythms of life without being swept along by them. In this, there is a soft, enduring confidence, a sense of knowing that your heart is intact even when the currents of the world are restless. There is also a slow, gentle freedom in this practice. By holding yourself, by restraining your immediate impulses, you begin to see that your presence is not dependent on the reaction of others. You no longer seek approval, no longer bend to expectation, no longer allow the sharp edges of the world to carve into the soft spaces of your being. Instead, you discover the quiet power of a heart that is self-contained, a mind that is steady, a spirit that rests in its own understanding. And over time, the restraint itself becomes a companion, a quiet teacher, a gentle guide. You notice the soft patience that grows in the chest, the calm clarity that fills the mind, the subtle joy that blooms in the spa. See ease between impulses. You feel that even when the world pushes, even when the noise rises around you, your inner life is untouched, unshaken, quietly forming into something whole and resilient. Have you ever sensed that? The slow, quiet flowering of strength that comes not from reaction but from careful, measured stillness? And so, as days pass, as moments accumulate, you begin to understand the deep value of restraint. It is not a temporary measure, not a fleeting act, not a small compromise. It is the shaping of yourself, quietly, persistently, like a potter molding clay with gentle hands, never hurried, never forceful, yet leaving a form that is enduring, balanced, and beautiful in its own subtle way. You are becoming softly, steadily, and in this becoming you find a calm confidence that cannot be taken, a quiet dignity that no voice can disturb, and a patient, steady heart that continues to grow quietly in its own unshakable rhythm. Over time, you begin to notice something quiet but certain. They cannot reach what has been built in silence. Their words, their expectations, their pressures, they touch only the surface like wind stirring leaves, but they cannot move the roots deep within you. Have you felt that before? The realization that what belongs to you cannot be taken, cannot be shaken, cannot be diminished by the insistence of others? It is a subtle power, not visible, not loud, not measured by recognition or applause. You feel it in the steady beat of your heart, in the calm of your breath, in the soft awareness that no outside force can disturb the balance you have formed inside. There is freedom in this, A freedom that comes from understanding that true strength is not shown in victories over others, but in control over self, in the quiet authority of a mind that is not easily swayed, a heart that is not easily disturbed. They may continue to speak, to push, to demand, but you are no longer drawn into the currents they stir. You observe with patience, not because you are indifferent, but because you have learned the subtle distinction between what requires your energy and what does not. Have you ever noticed how much of life is spent responding to forces that do not truly belong to you, and how quietly the heart can flourish when it learns to reserve its attention for what matters most? This inner power does not shout. It does not demand recognition or obedience. It grows quietly, steadily, like roots spreading beneath the earth, unseen but firm, providing life and stability to all that rests above. And in this quiet growth, you discover the soft dignity of self-respect. You begin to see that it is not the loudest voice that matters, not the sharpest argument, not the quickest reaction. What matters is the calm center you carry within yourself, the place where your thoughts, your feelings, and your decisions remain intact and undisturbed. You may notice the temptation to measure your strength in visible ways, to test it against the noise around you. And yet, each time you resist that temptation, each time you hold your calm without seeking validation, the power grows stronger, more assured. You begin to understand that restraint and observation are not signs of weakness, but marks of wisdom. And slowly, almost without effort, you feel the quiet joy that comes from knowing that your inner life belongs to you, fully and completely. It is in these moments of quiet presence that you understand the most profound truths. The world may attempt to define you, to shape you, to pull you into its urgencies, yet the essence of who you are cannot be touched. You feel it as a steady warmth in your chest, a gentle light that does not flicker even in the shadow of misunderstanding or judgment. Have you ever felt that light, soft but unyielding, glowing quietly in the places no one else can see? And with this understanding comes a new clarity. You no longer confuse activity with strength, nor attention with power. You see that the greatest influence is not in the words you speak, but in the way you hold yourself, the way you observe without rushing, the way you respond with calm when others expect reaction. The world may rush, may demand, may insist, and yet you remain anchored, quietly confident in the unshakable ground of your own presence. You begin to sense the subtle ways this inner power shapes your life. Decisions become easier, not because they are simpler, but because your mind is clear, unclouded by the noise of outside expectation. Emotions are steadier, not because they are suppressed, but because they are held with awareness, respected without being hurried. Even the small challenges, the soft pressures, the gentle disturbances that once might have unsettled you, now pass without shaking the calm that has grown quietly within. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a sense of completeness settles in. You realize that the world cannot take from you what you have quietly cultivated. Your strength, your dignity, your presence, they belong entirely to you, untouched by external demands. You feel a soft, enduring peace in this knowledge, a quiet pride that does not boast, a gentle certainty that comes not from what is seen, but from what is known within. And so, even as the voices continue, even as the currents stir, you remain. You remain quietly, steadily, fully, entirely. You feel the weight of your own presence, light yet firm, calm yet alive, unshakable in the softest and most enduring way. The power is yours, held in stillness, nurtured by patience, and protected by the quiet strength that no one else can touch. With each quiet choice, each unspoken word, a gentle stillness begins to settle around you. It is not the kind of calm that shouts or demands attention, nor the kind that arrives suddenly and leaves a mark on everyone who sees it. It is a slow, patient calm, like a lake after the wind has passed, its surface smooth and reflective, holding everything softly without needing to do more. Have you ever noticed how quiet can feel heavier than noise, yet somehow lighter at the same time? You may feel the weight of all the moments that came before, the times you wanted to speak, the times you felt pushed, the times you held yourself back, and yet you notice that none of them can disturb this present stillness. They exist like stones along a path, but they do not define the way you walk. You are learning the soft rhythm of presence, the gentle pace of observing without interference, of holding your own heart tenderly in the quiet space that belongs entirely to you. In this quiet, there is no need to prove anything. The world may continue to spin, may continue to speak, may continue to demand, and yet you do not need to match it. You feel the subtle strength of simply being fully and softly aware of your own breath, your own heartbeat, the slow pulse of your awareness moving through you like a gentle tide. And in noticing these things, you feel a deep sense of belonging, not to the noise outside, not to the expectations pressed upon you, but to yourself entirely, completely, steadily. Sometimes, in this calm, you may catch the faint echoes of the past, the voices that tried to pull you into reaction, the urgencies that demanded attention, and yet as you notice them, they lose their power. They pass over you like clouds across the sky, shifting and changing, unable to settle on the surface that you have cultivated. Have you ever felt that quiet relief, the one that comes from knowing you do not need to be moved by every current, every word, every expectation? There is a subtle joy in this stillness, not the kind that leaps or shouts, but the kind that warms the chest softly, a gentle reminder that you are complete in your own presence. You begin to see that peace does not come from silence around you, but from silence within, from the quiet attention you give to your own heart, the gentle way you honor your own thoughts and feelings. And in this attention, you find a comfort that no outside disturbance can touch, a soft reassurance that your inner life is whole and intact. You may notice the way your senses feel sharper, more aware, not because the world is louder, but because you have allowed yourself the space to observe it fully, without rushing, without reaction. You hear the soft rustle of air, the faintest shift of leaves, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. These small things, almost invisible, become a quiet landscape where you can rest, where you can move gently, where you can inhabit your own being without disturbance. Have you ever felt too? He-way quiet can create its own world, one that is entirely yours. In this space, you begin to understand that the calm you carry is not fragile. It does not depend on what others do, what others say, or what the world demands. It is steady, rooted in the choices you have made, in the patience you have practiced, in the quiet power you have cultivated. And with this understanding comes a soft confidence, one that does not need recognition, does not seek reward, does not demand attention. It is simply present, fully, completely, quietly enduring. And as you rest in this calm, you may notice the gentleness that grows in the heart, the restlessness that once stirred softly within begins to fade. The impulses that once demanded expression no longer pull with urgency. You feel the soft unfolding of peace, not as a distant hope, not as a fleeting thought, but as a slow, steady reality that moves through you like light over water. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is entirely real, entirely yours, entirely enough. And so you remain quietly, softly, fully. You carry no rush, no weight of expectation, no need to be understood. The world continues to turn. The voices continue to rise. The pressures continue to press. And yet you are untouched. You feel the gentle strength of your own presence, the quiet dignity of your own choices, the serene steadiness of a heart that has learned to rest in itself. In this calm, there is no end, no finish, no need for applause. There is lie the quiet certainty of being fully, gently, and entirely here,